My name is Peg Davies and I work for Mindarie Regional Council as a Waste Education Officer. My role at Mindarie is, because Mindarie Regional Council is made up of 7 member councils, so we go from Victoria Park, Perth, Vincent, Cambridge, Stirling, Joondalup, Wanneroo. So we've got a big geographical area and we've got a big different sorts of demographics all over the place and different ages. So education is taking people on tours of the tip, tours of the composting place, giving community education through an Earth Carers program, going to schools, supporting a battery program, supporting a fluorescent recycling program, supporting people that want to start up community gardens and particular interest in reusing organics in that respect. So the whole thing is a little bit related around waste, but my interest is really how to connect people to each other and connecting them back to the earth as well. It's quite interesting when we're talking about waste because we often just think about what we do at home. We do live at home and that's a big place that we can make changes. So obviously reducing the packaging that we buy, trying to get things in bulk, taking our own bags. If we buy things in bulk, taking our own bags to put things in. Then if we have to get packaging, trying to recycle it as much as possible depending on where we live. But extending it past that, we also socialise. Sometimes we might go to school, sometimes we might go to work, we might live in a retirement village. So everywhere we interact, we've also got some kind of commercial transaction. If we work in an office, we're producing waste. Because it's quite biblical really, when 2 or 3 are gathered together, there'll be waste. So if we sit down and have a picnic, there'll be waste. So a part of it is thinking ahead and thinking of what we're going to generate and trying to minimise that before we go somewhere. For example, walking around and having some kind of permanent cup in our bag so that if we have that spontaneous drink or cup of coffee, we've got a drink there. If we work in an office in the city, we might have our special cup in the drawer at work, but what about the coffee when we're on our way to work? What about that coffee cup? Millions of coffee cups go in the bin all the time. All the bottled water. We've got this crazy idea that we need to buy water when we've got one of the most pure sources of water in the whole world, and there's so many people that don't even have clean water and we think we've got to buy it. Well, let's just buy a filtration system at home if we're worried about the water in the tap. Simple things like that we can do. But then when we go to work, then when we go and socialise somewhere, think about the kind of waste that that event is producing and how we can be involved in those things. So what's happening in our office? How do we buy things? How do we buy paper? How do we photocopy? The kind of computers we use. When we get a new phone or a new computer, what happens to the old one? What happens to the waste that's produced in the office or in the kitchen in the office when it's at the end of the day and goes in the bin? Is there any recycling system there? There's a whole lot of away situations that we need to think of besides what we do at home. We're going to build a house, we're going to put in a new patio, we're going to have some renovations. If we're in the city and we look around, there's a whole lot of cranes in the city. Now those cranes are there because they're building something, but building is happening in the city because another building has been knocked down. Where are all those skip bins going of the material that's been knocked down, the material that's being dug up when we build a new road? Where's all that going? Where's it all come from? Are the buildings that we build, whether it's our home or it's an office block or whether it's a big business, are the materials that we're using, are they going to be able to be recycled or reused in 50 or 100 years' time when those things have to be knocked down? We must think about the future and we must think about it in the context that we're using things today. Another example which would tie in really well with the Recycling Week and the Big Aussie Swap that's going on here in the Carillion is reusing things. So when we decide that we don't want to use clothes anymore or we don't want to use items anymore, we just want them to go away and we want them out of our life. And so if we're a little bit responsible, we might package them up and give them to the Good Sammies or put them in a thrift shop or some other possibility. Sometimes we end up just putting them in the bin. But have we ever thought of going the extra step and say maybe shopping in those places as well? So when we want to replace those items, having a think about, well, let's go to those places and how can we buy them? Do we use Gumtree? Do we use FreeCycle? Do we use all sorts of places online that we can use to sell things, to buy things? Again, going back to the home renovations, if we want to extend the patio, if we want to put brick paving down, look up Gumtree, maybe there's some free brick pavers. All of these items, it helps to keep it in the system. So mobile phones is another one. Do you know anybody under the age of 20 that has had the same mobile phone for more than 2 years? Probably not. Do we really need those new mobile phones? Do we need the new TVs? And what do we do with the ones that we have that we're replacing? We usually put them in the drawer or put them on the shelf because they look too good to throw out, but do we send them away for recycling, or do we give them to someone else to find a new home? I suppose I would really encourage people to do, there's a course called Earth Carers, and it happens in a number of local councils in all around Perth, showing people just where our stuff goes when we don't want it anymore, how it's dealt with on a commercial basis or on a council basis, and also lots of hints and tips on how we can do things better ourselves. So people, when they do the course, they're incredibly concerned about where it is, so they get overwhelmed, inspired, encouraged, depressed. The whole gamut of feelings goes on while you're doing the Earth Carers course, but I thoroughly endorse it and encourage people to do it because you'll never look in a bin the same way again.